I'm Emery Jackson, 20 years old, standing at the podium on graduation day, with an empty front row where my parents should be. My valedictorian medal feels heavier than it should, weighing down my chest as I stare at the crowd. The text from Mom still burns in my mind. Jessica's pedicure appointment ran long. We'll try to make it for the end. 12 years of straight. As 4 years of sleepless nights. And I wasn't worth showing up for. If you're watching this and know what it's like to be the invisible child, let me know where you're from in the comments. Hit subscribe and stick around as I share how I finally made my voice heard after years of silence. The first time I realized I was the second choice child, I was 7 years old. My parents, Thomas and Eleanor Jackson, had promised to attend my first grade spelling bee. I had practiced for weeks, memorizing words far beyond my grade level. When the big day arrived, I stood on stage, scanning the audience for their faces, but found only empty seats. Later that night, they returned home with Jessica, my sister, who was 9 at the time, carrying shopping bags filled with new dance outfits. "We're so sorry, buddy," Dad said, ruffling my hair without making eye contact. Jessica had an unexpected dance team fitting, and you know how important her recitals are. I nodded and mumbled that it was okay. It wasn't, but I was already learning to swallow disappointment. "Did you win?" Mom asked as an afterthought already, helping Jessica unpack her new outfits. "Second place," I said, holding up my silver certificate. "Oh, that's nice," Mom replied, barely glancing at it. "Jessica, honey show. Emery, the special shoes we got you." This pattern continued throughout elementary school. When I brought home perfect report cards, they would glance at them and say, "That's what we expect from you." When Jessica brought home C's and the occasional B, there were celebrations, ice cream trips, and excessive praise for her improvement. My 10th birthday was perhaps the clearest early example of where I stood in the family hierarchy. I had invited my small group of friends for a party planned for Saturday. My mom had promised a superhero theme with games and a special cake. I was so excited I could barely sleep the night before. Saturday morning, I woke up early and rushed downstairs to help set up, only to find my parents loading Jessica's dance gear into the car. "Oh, Emery," Mom said, looking flustered. "I'm so sorry, but Jessica's dance recital got rescheduled for today. We have to go, it's the regional finals." "But my party?" I asked, feeling my stomach drop. "We'll have to reschedule," Dad said firmly. "This is a big opportunity for your sister." "What about my friends?" "They're coming in 2 hours. Mom looked at her watch. "Call them and cancel. We left some snacks in the pantry for you. Mrs. Peterson next door knows we're going out, so she'll check on you." They left without another word. I spent my 10th birthday calling friends to tell them not to come then, sitting alone, eating chips, and a store-bought cupcake I found in the refrigerator. When they returned that evening, Jessica was holding a trophy, and my birthday wasn't mentioned again. We never did reschedule that party. I learned 2 important lessons that day. First, that Jessica would always come first, and second, that the only way to gain any recognition in this family was through achievement. So I threw myself into academics with a vengeance. If perfect wasn't enough, I would have to be exceptional. By middle school, I had developed an efficient system. I rose at 5:30 every morning to study before school. I joined every academic club available and volunteered for community service that would look good on college applications. I wasn't doing this for my resume, I was desperately trying to matter. In 8th grade, I won the state science fair with a project on renewable energy. The local newspaper featured me on the front page of the community section. When I showed my parents, Dad said, "That's great, son," then immediately turned the page to read the sports section. Mom glanced at it and said, "Don't let this go to your head. Staying humble is important." That same week, Jessica placed 4th in a local talent show, and my parents threw her a party, inviting the entire extended family to celebrate her artistic breakthrough. The contrast was painful, but I had found one source of validation: my English teacher, Mrs. Reynolds. She recognized something in me that my parents never saw. "You have a voice, Emery," she told me after reading one of my essays. "Don't let anyone silence it." Mrs. Reynolds became my anchor throughout middle school and followed me to high school when she transferred to teach advanced placement English there. She was the first person who made me feel seen. Jessica, meanwhile, had perfected the art of maintaining her position as the family favorite. Anytime I received even a modicum of attention, she would manufacture some crisis or achievement that required immediate acknowledgement. When I was accepted into the National Honor Society, Jessica announced at dinner that she had been asked to audition for a small commercial. My news was forgotten instantly, as my parents peppered her with questions and excitement. What hurt most wasn't the favoritism itself, it was the casualness of it. The way my parents didn't even try to hide it or see anything wrong with it. They genuinely believed that Jessica's needs and accomplishments were inherently more significant than mine. I loved my family, but as I moved through my teen years, I felt increasingly invisible in my own home. I built a life outside it, studying, volunteering, and eventually finding friends who valued me. But there was always that core wound, that knowledge, that in the eyes of the people who should love me most unconditionally, I would always be second best. High school intensified both my academic drive and the family dynamic. I threw myself into coursework with single-minded determination, taking every advanced placement class offered, and staying up until midnight or later to maintain perfect grades. My parents rarely asked about my studies or noticed my exhaustion. In sophomore year, I met Kyle Chen during debate club. Unlike most people who knew my sister first, Kyle had no preconceptions about me. He saw me for who I was, not as Jessica's quieter, smarter brother. "Dude, you're a machine," Kyle said. After I spent 3 consecutive weekends helping him prepare for a major debate tournament. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" I shrugged. "It's just what I do." Kyle gave me a look that told me he wasn't buying it. Nobody works this hard without a reason. After months of friendship during a late-night study session in his basement, I finally told him about the family dynamic. Kyle listened without interruption, then shook his head. "That's messed up, man. You deserve better." It was the first time anyone had validated what I'd been feeling for years, and something shifted inside me. Having just one person who saw the truth made it easier to bear. Junior year brought a string of academic victories, perfect SAT scores, first place in the state debate championship, early acceptance letters from Ivy League universities. Each achievement was met with the same tepid response from my parents. "Good job," my father would say, barely looking up from his phone. "Don't get cocky," my mother would warn. "College will be much harder." Meanwhile, Jessica's C+ in algebra was celebrated with dinner at her favorite restaurant because she'd really applied herself this semester. When my AP physics teacher nominated me for a prestigious science scholarship, my parents didn't attend the award ceremony because Jessica had a hair appointment for prom. When I won first place in a national essay contest, they forgot to read the piece altogether. The pattern was so established that I no longer expected them to show up or care. I had Kyle, Mrs. Reynolds, and a small circle of friends who supported me. Still, there was a hollow space in my chest that no academic achievement could fill. Senior year arrived, and with it came the announcement that mattered most to me. I was first in my class. Valedictorian. The pinnacle of academic success in high school. After years of work, I had achieved what I'd been aiming for since freshman year. I called my parents immediately after the principal informed me. "Mom, I got it. I'm valedictorian," I said, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. "That's nice, honey," she replied distractedly. "Jessica just got a call back for that community theater production. We're taking her shopping for audition outfits right now. Can we talk about this later?" I sat in my car in the school parking lot for a long time after that call, staring at nothing. When I finally went home that evening, there was a small card on my bed that read, "Congratulations," in my father's handwriting. No personal message, just the generic text from the card company. It was something I supposed. Jessica's reaction was even more telling. When she heard the news, a flash of annoyance crossed her face before she quickly masked it. "Well, everyone expected that," she said with a dismissive wave. "It's not like it was a surprise." What I didn't expect was how she immediately changed the subject to her audition, effectively redirecting any potential attention away from my achievement. The weeks leading up to graduation were consumed with preparing my valedictorian speech. Mrs. Reynolds offered to help me during lunch periods. "This is your moment, Emery," she said. "Make it count." I worked on draft after draft, pouring my heart into what I wanted to say. The speech I created was about perseverance, about finding your own path even when the journey is difficult. It was optimistic and grateful, thanking teachers, mentioning fellow students, and expressing appreciation for family support. That last part had been the hardest to write. I struggled with what to say about my family when their support had been so minimal. In the end, I included a brief, vague thank you to them, because that's what was expected. As graduation approached, I made sure my parents had all the details. I marked the date on the family calendar in red. I left a printed schedule on the refrigerator with my speech time highlighted. I reminded them verbally at least once a week. "It's at 10 a.m. on Saturday," I said during dinner 3 days before the ceremony. "I have to be there at 8:30, but you should arrive by 9:30 to get good seats. They're reserving a special section for valedictorian and salutatorian families." "We know, Emery," my mother said, sounding exasperated. "You've told us multiple times." "We'll be there," my father added without looking up from his meal. Despite years of disappointment, I allowed myself to hope. This was different. This was graduation. This was me standing at the pinnacle of high school achievement. Surely they would show up for this. Kyle wasn't so sure. "Don't set yourself up, man," he warned, as we tried on our graduation gowns in his bedroom. "If they've missed everything else, what makes you think they'll prioritize this?" "It's graduation," I said, as if that explained everything. "And I'm giving the main speech. Everyone's parents come to graduation." Kyle gave me a sympathetic look but said nothing more. I think we both knew he was right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. The night before graduation, I laid out my clothes, polished my dress shoes, and read through my speech one final time. I fell asleep thinking that tomorrow might be different. Tomorrow might be the day my parents finally saw me. Graduation day dawned bright and clear. I woke up at 6, too anxious to sleep any longer. The ceremony wouldn't start until 10, but I wanted to be ready early. I showered, shaved carefully, and put on the new shirt and tie I'd bought specifically for this occasion. The valedictorian medal that had been presented to me at the senior awards ceremony the week before, which my parents had missed for Jessica's dance rehearsal, was laid out on my dresser. When I went downstairs at 7:30, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I checked my parents' room, empty. Beds made. Jessica's room also empty. A note on the kitchen counter caught my eye. "Emery, Jessica has an emergency appointment to fix her pedicure before her audition this afternoon. We took her early to make sure there's time. We'll try to make it back for your speech, but might be cutting it close. Good luck, Mom." I read the note twice, unable to process what I was seeing. My graduation. My valedictorian speech. The culmination of 4 years of relentless work. And they might miss it for a pedicure. Not even an emergency pedicure. Affixed to an existing pedicure. My hands shook as I picked up my phone and called my mother. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Emery, we're busy right now," she said, sounding annoyed. I could hear salon music in the background. "Mom, it's my graduation. I'm giving the valedictorian speech. You promised you'd be there." I know, and we're trying. But Jessica's audition is at 2, and they messed up her toe design yesterday. This was the only time they could fix it. Can't she go after graduation? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Don't be selfish, Emery, my mother replied sharply. Your sister's future could depend on this audition. It's for a regional commercial, and my speech doesn't matter. The one I've been working on for weeks. My father's voice came on the line. Son, we're proud of you. You know that. But this is just a speech. You'll have many more accomplishments in your life. Just a speech. I repeated, feeling something break inside me. Right. Just the valedictorian speech. At my high school graduation. No big deal. Exactly, my father said, missing the sarcasm entirely. We'll try to make it, but if not, we'll see you at home afterward. The call ended, and I stood in the kitchen staring at nothing. 12 years of straight A's, 4 years of sleepless nights, countless weekends of studying, instead of socializing, all to make them proud, all to matter, and they couldn't miss a pedicure appointment. Something changed in that moment. A switch flipped. The careful, accommodating, understanding Emery, who had swallowed disappointment for years, vanished. In his place stood someone I barely recognized, someone burning, with the accumulated rage of a lifetime of being second best. I tried calling Kyle, but he didn't answer. He was probably already on his way to the school with his parents. His parents who would never miss his graduation for anything. Instead, I called Mrs. Reynolds. They're not coming, I said, when she answered, not bothering with a greeting. A pause. Oh, Emery, I'm so sorry. Jessica needed an emergency pedicure. I said the words, tasting like acid. Apparently that's more important. Mrs. Reynolds was quiet for a moment. I'll save seats for you to have someone in the family section. My husband and I would be honored to sit there. That small kindness nearly broke me. Thank you, I managed to say before hanging up. I drove to school in a fog, my carefully prepared speech burning a hole in my pocket. The words I had crafted to please and thank and acknowledge now seemed hollow. False. I thought about all the times I had publicly pretended my family was supportive. All the times I had covered for their absence with excuses. All the times I had lied to protect their image and save face. As I parked at school, a new thought occurred to me. What if just this once I told the truth? The preparations for graduation were in full swing when I arrived. Students in caps and gowns clustered in nervous groups. Parents carried flowers and balloons. Everywhere I looked, there were families celebrating together. Kyle found me as I was putting on my gown in the classroom designated for graduates. My parents aren't coming, I said before he could ask. Emergency pedicure for Jessica. Kyle stared at me speechless for a moment. Are you serious? A pedicure? I nodded, adjusting my valedictorian medal with fingers that didn't feel like my own. What are you going to do? He asked, watching me carefully. I pulled out my speech, the safe, grateful, generic speech I had prepared. Then I pulled out a notebook from my backpack. I'm going to tell the truth, I said, and began to write. Mrs. Reynolds found me 20 minutes before the ceremony was to begin. She took one look at my face and seemed to understand. Whatever you're planning, be sure it's something you can live with, she said quietly. I looked up at her. I've been living with their disregard for 18 years. I think I can live with honesty for once. The graduation march began. We filed into the auditorium in alphabetical order, which put me near the middle of the procession. As I walked to my seat, I scanned the family section. Mrs. Reynolds and her husband sat in the reserved section where my family should have been. No sign of my parents or Jessica. The ceremony progressed with the usual speeches from the principal and school board president. Awards were presented. Then came the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated. And now the principal announced, "It is my distinct pleasure to introduce this year's valedictorian." A student who has maintained a perfect grade point average throughout his high school career, who has won numerous academic competitions, and who represents the very best of what education can achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, Emery Jackson. Applause filled the auditorium as I rose and made my way to the podium. My heart hammered in my chest. In my hand, I clutched both my original speech and the new notes I had written in a fury just minutes earlier. As I stood looking out at the crowd, time seemed to slow. I saw Kyle giving me a thumbs up. I saw Mrs. Reynolds watching me with concern and support. I saw the empty seats where my family should have been, and I made my choice. Good morning, faculty, families, and fellow graduates. I began my voice steadier than I felt. It's an honor to stand before you today. I glanced down at my original speech, then deliberately set it aside. The audience was still watching attentively, unaware of the turn I was about to take. I had a speech prepared about perseverance, gratitude, and looking toward the future. It was a good speech full of inspirational quotes and heartfelt thanks. But standing here today, I find I can't deliver it, because it would be a lie. A murmur went through the crowd. The principal shifted uncomfortably in his seat behind me. You see, I've been lying for years, smiling and pretending everything is fine when it isn't, making excuses for absences that hurt, covering up a family dynamic that has shaped every decision I've made since I was 7 years old. I took a deep breath. There was no going back now. Today, my parents aren't here. They're at a nail salon fixing my sister's pedicure before her audition this afternoon. And that might seem like a small thing, except it's not an isolated incident. It's the culmination of a lifetime of being the invisible child. The auditorium had gone completely silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, but strangely, I wasn't nervous anymore. There was a peculiar freedom in finally speaking the truth. When I was 7, I won second place in the spelling bee. My parents missed it for my sister's dance fitting. When I was 10, my birthday party was canceled because my sister had a recital. No one even remembered to reschedule it. When I won the state science fair, the newspaper coverage was ignored, but when my sister placed 4th in a local talent show, my parents threw her a party. I looked directly at the camera that was recording the ceremony for the live stream, knowing that if my parents were watching from the salon, they would see me now. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I'm done pretending. I'm done carrying the weight of family secrets. For years, I've worked myself to exhaustion trying to earn attention and approval that were never going to come. I convinced myself that if I just achieved enough, if I just became valedictorian, then finally I would matter. I paused, looking out at the sea of shocked faces. But here's what I've learned. You cannot earn love that is supposed to be unconditional. You cannot achieve your way into mattering, and you cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. My voice grew stronger as I continued. What none of you know is that my sister's accomplishments, the ones my family prioritizes over everything I do, aren't what they seem. Her impressive grade improvement last year happened because my parents paid a tutor to take her online classes. Her dance award was given after my father donated new lighting equipment to the studio. Her college acceptance came through my mother's sorority connections after she failed to meet the academic requirements. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. I knew I was crossing a line, but years of suppressed truth were pouring out of me. 2 years ago, my sister was caught plagiarizing an essay for her college application. My parents paid $30,000 to the alumni fund to make it disappear. Last year, she crashed her car while driving under the influence, and my father used his friendship with the police chief to keep it out of her record. I could see Mrs. Reynolds watching me with wide eyes, but I couldn't stop now. My parents have spent years telling our extended family that I'm antisocial and difficult that I choose not to attend family functions. When the truth is, they often don't tell me about these gatherings until afterward. They've created a narrative about me as the cold, aloof child to explain why they focus all their attention on my sister. I took another deep breath. I used to think something was wrong with me, that I wasn't lovable enough, or interesting enough, or talented enough. It's taken me years to understand that the problem was never me. Some parents simply choose favorites, and no amount of achievement can change that. I looked around at my fellow graduates, many of whom were watching with expressions ranging from shock to admiration. So to those of you who have felt invisible, who have worked yourselves to exhaustion, trying to matter, who have swallowed your pain to keep the peace, I see you. You are not alone. And it is not your fault. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. To the parents here today, thank you for showing up. Thank you for making your children feel valued. Not just the loud ones. Not just the ones whose talents are easily showcased, but all of them. I straightened my shoulders and continued. As we graduate today, I want you all to know that I am not defined by my family's inability to see my worth. I am defined by the friendships I've built with people who truly see me, by the mentors who have guided me, by the work I've done and the person I've become. Despite not because of my upbringing, I glanced over at Kyle, who was watching me with fierce pride. My worth was never dependent on my GPA or my medals or my college acceptances. And neither is yours. We are valuable simply because we exist. That is a lesson I wish I had learned much sooner. I could see the principal starting to rise, possibly to cut me off, so I moved toward my conclusion. Today marks not just our graduation from high school, but my personal graduation from seeking validation where it will never be found. I'm done pretending. I'm done making excuses. I'm done being invisible. I looked directly into the camera again. Mom, Dad, if you're watching this, I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Because carrying anger only hurts me. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll continue to accept being unseen. From today forward, I choose to surround myself with people who value me just as I am. I stepped back from the podium slightly. To my fellow graduates, as we move forward into the next chapter of our lives, I hope you'll remember this. You don't need to earn your place in this world. You already have one. Thank you. I walked away from the podium into complete silence. For a terrible moment, I thought I had made a catastrophic mistake. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single person began to clap. Then, another. And another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet in a standing ovation. As I returned to my seat, the principal approached me, his expression a mix of concern and conflict. That was not the speech we approved, he said quietly. I know, I replied. It was the speech I needed to give. He seemed about to say more, but the continuing applause made him simply nod and return to the podium to continue the ceremony. I sat through the rest of graduation in a state of emotional shock, barely registering when my name was called again to receive my diploma. The ceremony concluded, and as we filed out, I was met with a barrage of handshakes, hugs, and words of support from classmates, many of whom had never spoken to me before. As I exited the auditorium into the bright sunlight of the courtyard, the reality of what I'd done began to sink in. There would be consequences. Significant ones. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Kyle pushed through the crowd to reach me, enveloping me in a bear hug. Holy shit, man, he whispered. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. When he pulled back, I could see both shock and admiration in his eyes. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. But I think I will be. Mrs. Reynolds appeared next, her husband beside her. She didn't speak at first, just placed her hands on my shoulders and looked at me intently. That took courage, she finally said. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" I nodded. "I think so. Whatever happens, you have people in your corner," she assured me, squeezing my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Emery. Not for your grades or achievements, but for finding your voice." My phone had been on silent during the ceremony, but when I checked it now, the screen was filled with notifications, text messages from distant relatives I rarely heard from, social media alerts, and missed calls from both my parents. One text from my cousin Zach caught my attention. "Watching the live stream. Had no idea what was happening in your house. We were always told you didn't want to come to family events. I'm so sorry, man." Similar messages from other relatives followed. It seemed the live stream of graduation had reached far beyond the auditorium. As I was scrolling through the messages, a commotion near the parking lot caught my attention. A car had pulled up hastily, and Jessica was climbing out, her face flushed and panicked. She was still wearing salon flip-flops, her freshly painted toes exposed. Our parents were nowhere in sight. She spotted me and rushed over, pushing past, celebrating families. "What the hell?" "Emery," she demanded, her voice shrill. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I faced her calmly. I told the truth. "For once, you humiliated me in front of everyone. You ruined everything." Her voice was rising, attracting attention from nearby graduates and their families. "I stated facts, Jessica. If those facts are humiliating, that's not my problem. They're watching it all over town." Mom's phone started blowing up with calls from her friends. The salon had the live stream playing. She was nearly hyperventilating now. "My audition is in 2 hours, and now everyone will be talking about this instead." Something about her panic, about her concern being solely focused on her audition, rather than the years of pain I described, solidified my resolve. "That's exactly the problem, Jess. It's always about you. My graduation, my speech, and all you care about is how it affects your audition, because my audition actually matters. This was just you showing off again, trying to make yourself look important." Her words hung in the air between us. In them I heard echoes of my parents' dismissals over the years, the familiar refrain that my achievements were expected unremarkable, while hers were exceptional and worthy of celebration. "Do you really believe that?" I asked quietly. "After everything I just said in there, do you honestly think this was about showing off?" Something flickered in her expression, uncertainty, perhaps even the first glimmer of understanding. But it was quickly replaced by defensive anger. "You had no right to talk about my grades, or the plagiarism thing," she hissed. "That was private family business." "I had every right to tell my story," I countered. "And your academic dishonesty is part of that story, part of why they always prioritized you. Because you needed them more. Because you couldn't succeed on your own." It was a harsh thing to say, but years of suppressed truth were finally finding their way out. Jessica stared at me, her expression shifting from anger to shock, to something that looked surprisingly like guilt. "I never asked them to ignore you," she said, her voice smaller now. "But you never stopped it either. You knew what was happening, and you played into it. You manipulated situations to keep their attention on you. That's not fair, isn't it? Remember my National Honor Society induction? How you suddenly announced your commercial audition? The second mom asked about my ceremony. Or the science fair win. When you insisted we all go out for ice cream to celebrate your participation award." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen her use countless times to get her way, but genuine ones that spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't know what else to do," she whispered. "You were always so perfect, so smart. If I didn't have their attention for my little accomplishments, what did I have? You didn't need their praise like I did." Her words hit me like a physical blow. All these years I'd seen Jessica as the favored child, the one who had everything I wanted. It had never occurred to me that she might have her own insecurities, her own struggles living in what she perceived as my shadow. I needed them too, Jess, I said softly. I just got tired of pretending I didn't. She looked at me then, really looked at me perhaps for the first time in years. The facade cracked, and suddenly she wasn't the confident, manipulative sister I'd grown up with, but a scared young woman realizing her world was built on shaky foundations. What happens now? She asked, her voice breaking. I shook my head. I don't know, but I can't go back to the way things were. A crowd had gathered around us, drawn by Jessica's initial outburst. I could see classmates watching, some with phones raised, undoubtedly recording. This private family moment had become public spectacle. Jessica seemed to notice the audience at the same time I did. Her breathing quickened and she looked around frantically at the sea of faces. The weight of public exposure, something she'd always courted, but never on these terms, seemed to crash down on her all at once. She took a stumbling step backward, then another. Her face had gone pale beneath her makeup. I can't do this, she gasped. Everyone knows. Everyone heard. I reached out a hand toward her, a reflexive gesture of concern despite everything, but she jerked away. Don't touch me. This is your fault, she cried, her voice breaking. And then, as the watching crowd murmured and shifted, Jessica's knees buckled. She collapsed to the ground outside the auditorium, sobbing uncontrollably, her body shaking with the force of her tears. The sight was jarring, my confident, always composed sister broken down in public. Despite years of resentment, I felt a surprising surge of protectiveness. Give her space, I said to the onlookers, moving to block their view. Show's over. Kyle appeared at my side, helping to create a barrier between Jessica and the curious crowd. Mrs. Reynolds was already on her phone, likely calling for assistance. As I knelt beside my sister, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space, I caught sight of my parents' car speeding into the parking lot. The reckoning I'd set in motion was just beginning. My parents burst through the dispersing crowd like a storm front. My father's face was flushed with anger, my mother's pale with shock. They took in the scene, Jessica sobbing on the ground, me kneeling beside her. The lingering spectators and their expressions hardened. What have you done? My father demanded, his voice low and dangerous. He knelt beside Jessica, helping her to her feet. It's okay, princess. We're here now. My mother turned on me, fury in her eyes. How could you? Airing family business in public. Lying about us. About your sister. After everything we've done for you. I stood my ground. I didn't lie. Not one word. You twisted everything she hissed. Made us sound like monsters when we've supported you your entire life. Supported me, I repeated incredulously. By missing every important event. By dismissing every achievement. By consistently choosing Jessica over me. For the most trivial reasons. We're not having this discussion here, my father cut in, his arm around Jessica's shoulders. Get in the car. Now. I shook my head. Number, I'm not going with you. My father's eyes widened. In 18 years, I had never directly refused an order from him. Emery, he said, his voice dropping to a warning tone. You've caused enough damage today. Don't make this worse. I'm not the one who caused damage, I replied evenly. I just exposed it. My mother stepped closer, lowering her voice. Do you have any idea what you've done? Your father's colleagues were watching that live stream. My friends were watching. How are we supposed to face anyone now? And there it was, their primary concern. Not the years of favoritism I'd endured, not the pain I'd expressed, but their social standing. That's not my problem, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. Maybe if you're embarrassed by your behavior being made public, you should examine the behavior, not blame me for revealing it. My father's face darkened. After everything we've sacrificed for you. What exactly have you sacrificed for me, Dad? I interrupted. My college fund is scholarships I earned myself. You haven't attended a school event of mine since elementary school. You didn't even read my college essays. We gave you a roof over your head. Food, clothing, basic parental responsibilities aren't sacrifices I countered. They're the minimum requirements of having a child. Jessica had quieted somewhat, though tears still streaked her makeup. She was watching our exchange with wide eyes, as if seeing our family dynamic clearly for the first time. You've always been so self-sufficient, my mother said, her tone accusatory. Jessica needed us more. I became self-sufficient because I had to, I replied. I learned early that I couldn't count on you. A small crowd was still watching from a distance, including Kyle and Mrs. Reynolds, who had positioned themselves close enough to intervene if needed. This is ridiculous, my father snapped. We're going home right now to sort this out privately as a family. There's nothing to sort out, I said. I meant every word I said in that speech. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it isn't. So, what's your plan? My mother asked, her voice scathing. Disown your family over perceived slights. Throw away 18 years because you're feeling sorry for yourself. I'm not disowning anyone. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. I glanced down to see it was my Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, whom I rarely saw because she lived across the country. I need to take this, I said, stepping away. Don't you dare walk away from us, my father called after me. I answered the phone, moving out of their immediate reach. Emery, it's Aunt Sarah. I saw the live stream, she said, her voice gentle. Are you okay? I'm still figuring that out, I admitted. Listen to me, she said urgently. What you described? It's exactly what your mother did. To me. Growing up. The same pattern. I've tried to reach out to you over the years, but Eleanor always said you were too busy or not interested. A piece clicked into place. I never knew you were trying to contact me. I suspected as much, she sighed. Emery, do you need a place to stay? You can come to Boston. Stay with me as long as you need. The offer stunned me. I thank you. I might take you up on that. My door is always open, she assured me. And Emery, I'm proud of you. What you did took tremendous courage. When I hung up and returned to where my family stood, the dynamic had shifted slightly. Jessica had moved a few steps away from our parents and was staring at the ground. Still sniffling, but calmer. That was Aunt Sarah, I said. Funny how she's been trying to connect with me for years, but I never knew. Because you filtered my communications. My mother's face tightened. Sarah always exaggerates. She's just trying to drive a wedge. Stop, Jessica said suddenly, her voice small but firm. Just stop, Mom. We all turned to her in surprise. Emery's right, she continued, not meeting any of our eyes. About everything. We all know it. My parents stared at her in shock. Jessica had never contradicted them before. Jessica, you're upset, my father began. The audition stress, and now this. I'm not going to the audition, she interrupted. I can't just pretend nothing happened. Emery told the truth, and we all need to deal with it. A silence fell over our group. Jessica siding with me was unprecedented. A seismic shift in the family dynamic. My mother recovered first. Let's all go home, she said, her tone conciliatory now. We'll have dinner together and talk this through as a family. I recognized the strategy: get me away from public eyes, from supporters, from witnesses, and then regain control of the narrative. Make promises of change that would evaporate once things calmed down. I'm not coming home tonight, I said firmly. I need space. Don't be ridiculous, my father scoffed. Where will you go? He can stay with us, Kyle said, stepping forward. I hadn't realized he was close enough to hear. My parents already said it's fine. My father turned to Kyle with a dismissive expression. This is a family matter. Kyle is more family to me than you've been, I cut in. He shows up. He listens. He supports me. Without conditions. My father's face reddened, but before he could respond, the guidance counselor, Mr. Phillips, approached our group. Is everything all right here? He asked, his eyes moving between us. Fine, my father said curtly. Just a family discussion. Mr. Phillips looked at me questioningly. I shook my head slightly. Emery, he said. Could I speak with you for a moment? About your college housing options. It was a transparent rescue attempt, but I was grateful for it. Of course. As I moved to step away with Mr. Phillips, my mother grabbed my arm. This isn't over, she hissed. You can't just walk away. I gently but firmly removed her hand. I'm not walking away. I'm choosing to continue this conversation. When we can all approach it calmly and honestly. You don't get to dictate terms, my father started, but Jessica interrupted him again. Let him go, Dad, she said, her voice steadier now. We all need to cool down. The shock of Jessica advocating for me seemed to deflate my father momentarily. He stepped back, jaw tight but silent. I walked away with Mr. Phillips feeling the weight of my family's eyes on my back. When we were out of earshot, he stopped and turned to me. That was quite a speech, he said. Are you safe to go home? The question surprised me. I'm not in physical danger, if that's what you're asking. He nodded. Good. But emotional safety matters too. The college housing office can expedite your summer accommodation request if needed. You could move in early. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved by his concern. I'm going to stay with Kyle tonight, but I might take you up on that soon. As I looked back toward where my family stood, I saw my parents talking intensely to Jessica, who kept shaking her head. For the first time in our lives, we were united, however, tentatively. It wasn't the reconciliation I might have hoped for, but it was a step toward honesty, and right now that was enough. 3 months later, I sat at my desk in my college dorm room, staring out the window at the autumn leaves beginning to turn. The transition from summer to fall mirrored my own transformation. Gradual, beautiful, but not without loss. The fallout from graduation day had been both better and worse than I'd anticipated. After spending that night at Kyle's house, I'd returned home to a family in crisis. My parents had shifted from anger to damage control, suddenly eager to work things out and start fresh. Their concern felt hollow, more focused on salvaging their social reputation than addressing the underlying issues. I'd agreed to family counseling, setting it as a condition for maintaining any relationship with them. The first session had been revelatory, the therapist, seeing through my parents' carefully constructed narrative almost immediately. It sounds like there's been a significant imbalance in how attention and validation have been distributed in this family, she'd observed, causing my mother to bristle and my father to shift uncomfortably. Jessica had surprised me the most. Away from our parents' influence, she'd begun to examine her role in our family dynamic. Our relationship, while still fragile, had begun to heal through tentative text conversations and occasional video calls. I never realized how much I relied on being the favorite, she'd admitted during one late-night call. It was like I needed their attention to prove I had value, especially when academics came so easily to you. It never felt easy, I told her. I worked constantly because it was the only way I felt visible at all. These conversations were painful, but healing, stripping away years of competition and resentment to find the siblings we might have been under different circumstances. My relationship with my parents had taken a different path. After 3 counseling sessions, it became clear they were more interested in returning to the status quo than doing the difficult work of change. When the therapist suggested they examine their own upbringings to understand the patterns they were repeating, they'd canceled the next appointment and never rescheduled. I'd moved into college housing early thanks to Mr. Phillips' intervention. The distance had been necessary and clarifying. I now limited my interactions with my parents to short phone calls every couple of weeks, each one carefully bounded by the new rules I'd established for myself. Aunt Sarah had become an unexpected source of support, calling regularly and even visiting campus during her business trip last month. Through her, I was connecting with extended family members who had been kept at a distance by my parents' controlling narrative. College itself had been transformative. Here, no one knew me as Jessica's brother or the family outcast. I was just Emery, valued for my ideas, my humor, my friendship. I'd found a circle of friends who appreciated me without condition or comparison. Kyle remained my closest friend, despite attending a different university 3 hours away. We texted daily and had standing weekend video calls where we dissected our new experiences and challenges. My graduation speech had gone viral in our town, spreading through social media and local news. The responses had been overwhelming, messages from classmates I barely knew sharing their own stories of family dysfunction and thanking me for my honesty. Several had even formed an informal support group that met bi-weekly at the local coffee shop. One message had particularly moved me from a freshman I'd tutored briefly. "Watching you stand up there and tell the truth made me realize I don't have to keep pretending my family is perfect either. I finally told my dad that his drinking is destroying our family, and he's in rehab now. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the scariest thing to say is exactly what needs to be said." The viral nature of the speech had brought uncomfortable attention too. Some parents had criticized me for disrespecting my family publicly. The school board had sent a stern letter about the unapproved deviation from my submitted speech, but these criticisms felt insignificant compared to the freedom I'd found in speaking my truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Got my midterm grades back. All B's and 1 AD it without help this time." I smiled as I typed back, "That's awesome, Jess. Genuinely proud of you." Her reply came quickly, "Thanks. Means a lot coming from you. For real." Another buzz. This one from my mother. "Family dinner. This Sunday. Your grandmother is asking for you." The familiar tension returned to my shoulders. I took a deep breath before responding, "Can't this weekend. Have a major project due. We'll try to call Grandma tomorrow." Setting boundaries was still difficult, still induced guilt. But each time I prioritized my well-being, it got a little easier. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Zach, one of my new friends from the psychology study group. "Counseling center. Called," he said. "They want to know if you're still willing to lead that discussion group on family dynamics for freshman orientation." I nodded. "Definitely. Just need to finalize my talking points." "Cool. Oh, and we're all heading to dinner in 20 if you want to join." After he left, I turned back to my window, watching students cross the quad below. Some walked alone, some in groups, each carrying their own invisible stories and struggles. I thought about how many of them might be like me 3 months ago, suffering silently, believing they were alone in their pain. The journey from that suffocating silence to where I stood now hadn't been easy. There had been days of doubt, nights of grief, for the family relationship I'd always wanted but never had. There had been angry voicemails from my father, tearful recriminations from my mother, painful realizations about years wasted, seeking validation from people structurally incapable of providing it. But there had also been liberation, the freedom to define myself on my own terms. The discovery that I was enough, not because of achievements or accolades, but simply because I existed. The joy of forming connections based on genuine appreciation rather than obligation or performance. I opened my laptop and pulled up the document for my discussion group. At the top, I typed, "Finding your voice. How to build authentic relationships after family dysfunction. The words flowed easily now, honest and direct. I wrote about boundaries and self-worth, about chosen family and the courage to speak truth. I wrote about forgiveness as a gift you give yourself, not a free pass for others to continue harmful patterns. As I wrote, I realized how far I'd come from that angry, hurt young man standing at the podium 3 months ago. The pain hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into something useful, something that could perhaps help others find their way to the other side. When I finished writing, I added a final paragraph. The hardest lesson I've learned is that you cannot make people value you. You cannot achieve your way into being seen. The only path forward is to value yourself enough to walk away from situations and relationships that diminish you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to prove your worth to people who will never truly see it, and instead, surround yourself with those who recognize it without you having to prove anything at all. I closed my laptop and grabbed my jacket to join my friends for dinner. As I locked my dorm room, I felt a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. The family I was born into might never be what I needed, but the family I was building around me, friends, mentors, even the sister I was slowly getting to know without our parents' influence, was becoming more than I could have imagined. Have you ever had to speak your truth when it was difficult? Or set boundaries with family even when it hurt? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of finding strength in difficult situations. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones that ultimately set us free. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to speak your own truth when the time comes.